When you see all the noise on the telly, what's going on in the country and with people connected to the country in other parts, it's very easy to let stuff slip through the net, isn't it? It's very easy to take your eye off the ball, so to speak. And, you have to watch everything all of the time. One of the issues that we have with the government, with Starmer, is how other citizens are treated elsewhere. I want to show you this tweet from GB News, Nigel Farage, and there's a video clip attached, which I'll play. How good is he at standing up for British citizens in trouble? Nigel Farage grills Keir Starmer for not doing enough for British citizen Jimmy Lai, who has been sentenced to 20 years in prison in Hong Kong. 20 years. Have a listen to this.
British citizen, Hong Kong resident Jimmy Lai, who of course has been a pro-democracy campaigner and a media baron, as you well know, has been in prison for some years. Have a look at this clip of the Chinese president when his name was mentioned last year.
We are concerned by reports of Jimmy Lai's deterioration health in prison. You raised the Chinese embassy building in London when we spoke on the telephone. And we have since taken action by calling in that application. Now we have to follow the legal process and timeline.
So last year, the Prime Minister raises Jimmy Lai, and you see what happens. The Chinese Communist Party officials get all the journos out of the room. But he goes back to Beijing a couple of weeks ago and says he'll raise the Jimmy Lai issue. Well, how good a negotiator is he? How good is he at standing up for British citizens in trouble? Well, yesterday, 78-year-old Lai was given a further 20 years in prison, a death sentence. And I tell you something, it's very, very different to prime ministers of old. And I may be going back to 1850, but the David Don Pacifico case, he was a Gibraltarian citizen. He was Jewish. He got attacked in Athens. His house was wrecked. He tried to claim compensation. He wasn't getting it. And Palmerston said, as the Roman in days of old held himself free from indignity when he could say, civis Romanus sum, so also a British subject in whatever land he may be shall feel confident that the watchful eye and the strong arm of England will protect him against injustice and wrong. And do you know what Palmerston did? He sent the Royal Navy to blockade Athens to defend the liberty and freedom and justice of just one British citizen.
You couldn't see them doing that in this day and age, could you? Mind you, we don't have much of a navy at all these days. It's rather embarrassing. Just a little bit of background on the Jimmy Lai case. Here's an article here, which I can pull up. So UK Foreign Secretary says pro-democracy campaigner Jimmy Lai Hong Kong jail term is tantamount to a life sentence. So he was arrested in August 2020 after China imposed a national security law following massive anti-government protests in Hong Kong. I remember those. The UK Foreign Secretary has said a 20-year jail term handed down by a Hong Kong court to pro-democracy campaigner Jimmy Lai is tantamount to a life sentence. Well, if you look at it, 78 years old, 20 years, you do the maths. The 78-year-old media tycoon and British citizen was found guilty of 2 counts of conspiracy to collude with foreign forces and 1 count of publishing seditious materials in December last year. He denied all the charges against him, saying in court he was a political prisoner facing persecution from Beijing. Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper agreed with that assessment and in a statement called the sentence a politically motivated prosecution aimed at Mr. Lai for exercising his right to freedom of expression. Don't you find this hypocritical where they talk about freedom of expression of other people, yet arrest people and throw them behind the door for the same in this country. For the 78-year-old, this is tantamount to a life sentence. I remain deeply concerned for Mr. Lai's health, and I again call on the Hong Kong authorities to end his appalling ordeal and release him on humanitarian grounds so that he may be reunited with his family, she added. Lai's son, Sebastian, told Sky News the case was a show trial and the result was not a surprise. I think many people expected it. This is essentially a life sentence, a death sentence, he said. Commenting on the prospect of his father being released, he added, I'm just holding out hope. I think we're in a situation where it's in both Hong Kong and China's best interest to release him. This is very damaging for their reputation. If my father dies, he becomes a martyr. Mr. Lai's lawyer gave no comment when asked if he would appeal the sentence. And on Sunday, the Hong Kong court said that Mr. Lai's sentence was in the most severe penalty band for offences of a grave nature, and that it was enhanced by his being the mastermind and driving force behind foreign collusion conspiracies. Mr. Lai, who founded the now defunct pro-democracy newspaper Apple Daily, was arrested in August 2020 after China imposed a national security law following massive anti-government protests in Hong Kong. The long-standing critic of the Chinese Communist Party had previously been sentenced for several lesser offences during his 5 years in prison. Mr. Lai has spent more than 1,800 days in solitary confinement. That's mentally, that's destructive. His family said his health has worsened as a result, and he suffers from diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart palpitations. The head of Hong Kong Police's National Security Department said on Monday, however, the claims on his frail health are exaggerated. Speaking after the verdict, Sky's Asia correspondent Helen Ann Smith said she spoke to Mr. Lai's biographer Mark Clifford last month. He's really the embodiment of what they fear, she cites the author and close friend of the jail tycoon as saying, a principled person, absolutely refusing to back down, smart, articulate, and crucially with a platform. Lai's plight has been criticised by world leaders, including Donald Trump and Keir Starmer. Keir discussed the case with Chinese leader Xi Jinping last month in Beijing's Great Hall of the People, as you saw in that little snippet earlier, according to people briefed on the talks. Several Western diplomats told the Reuters news agency that negotiations to free Mr. Lai would likely start in earnest after his sentencing and depending on where he appeals. There's been widespread criticism of the jail term. The United Nations human rights chief called for the verdict to be quashed. Mr. Lai released. This verdict needs to be promptly quashed as incompatible with international law, said UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk. The EU's diplomatic service, the European External Action Service, said it deplores the heavy prison sentence and called for Mr. Lai's immediate and unconditional release. Elaine Pearson, Asia Director of Human Rights Watch, added that the prison term was effectively a death sentence and was both cruel and profoundly unjust. Speaking to Reuters, a former Apple Daily reporter who gave his name as Wong said that now that red lines have formally become part of the judgment and sentences, the news industry, already severely weakened, will shrink even further. So that's that one. And if you want to know anything else about Jimmy Lai, this is his Wikipedia page, and there's some information on there about his political activities. Very interesting to get a handle on what was going on, and also a bit of a timeline and chronology of how he's ended up inside, what's been going on, appeals and all that sort of thing, and no doubt this recent situation as well, including the 20 years in prison. It's all there, so makes for very interesting reading for sure. Now, let me know what you think in the comments. As always, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, share my stuff. I'll talk to you soon. Toodaloo.